some Jasper Fire update stuff in the grab bag of governance. Prorogue likely, I've got there's a whole write-up, and I think I agree with it 90% anyway. There's a lot I agree with, and I think we're heading towards a prorogue because there is no other way that Trudeau retains power, period. Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe he's just going to ignore all of the problems, and it's just going to be driving 80 miles an hour down a bumpy washboard dirt road, right? Like this for the last couple of months of Justin Trudeau's tenure. I have no idea. And we've got some interesting things going on with China and the US that are very similar to what's going on with China and Canadian leadership. And I'll show that to you. So there's a lot to get to. Let's get to it first. Andrew K says, Mendocino didn't know. No, this is not right. This is not where we were going to start at all. We're starting at Prorogue. Globe Politics. This is reporting something that I reported yesterday. Anyway, some Liberal MPs launch a new push to oust Trudeau as others question whether latest revolt will be effective. Apparently, there's only 30 MPs, but this is a global. I think this is a Global News report. Ryan says there's no way 30 MPs will be able to force Trudeau to resign, and I don't want him to resign. I want him to lose the election big time. I just want him to be arrested. Can you run an election when you're arrested for treason? No, I don't think so. Right? Like, so I don't want him to run again. I want people to hold him accountable for the damage that he's done to the country. Here's Global News.
The Prime Minister arriving back in Canada to a brewing mutiny. Sources tell Global News there's a coordinated effort by up to 30 members of the Liberal caucus to push Justin Trudeau out as Liberal leader. Some MPs have been approached to sign a document calling for his ouster, but none of them are allowed to take photos or have copies in case the group decides to back down.
While I've been encouraged by
the Prime Minister and his staff learned of the developments, first reported by the Toronto Star, when his plane, which doesn't have Wi-Fi, landed late last night in Hawaii to refuel on his way home from Asia.
I find the note about the plane not having Wi-Fi weird, right? Like that's a little bit strange note. He had to land in Hawaii to learn of this development.
The Prime Minister didn't speak with the media, but Trade Minister Mary Ng, the only cabinet member on the trip, came out to play defense.
I'm a Liberal MP and I have full confidence in Justin Trudeau as my leader. I would say that I'm disappointed because Canadians expect us to be focusing on Canadians and doing this work.
But many of Mary Ng's colleagues disagree. Trudeau's lost the support of most of his Atlanta caucus and is on the verge of suffering the same fate with his Ontario and Quebec MPs, according to multiple Liberal MPs who spoke to Global News. Now, this isn't the first example of discontent. New Brunswick MP Wayne Long publicly called on Trudeau to quit in June after the party lost a former stronghold in a downtown Toronto by-election.
Okay, so there's lots of people who are upset with Justin Trudeau, and I don't know that it's enough, but given the backdrop of what else is going on, Parliament is at a standstill because the Conservatives have convinced the Speaker to stop any movement of anything until the Liberals produce documents about their corruption, which they don't want to do, and prorogation is an easy way out. Also, prorogation gives them time to replace the leader, which seems to be important at this point in time. And again, like, personally, I think Trudeau is probably an asset for the Liberals if they can keep him through the election, rather than having Chrystia Freeland lead them. Can you imagine? But I personally don't care. I mean, I hope the Liberals are reduced to one seat or less. I don't care about the Liberal Party. I think they're corrupt traitors, and I can't believe that anybody wants them to run. But like, unless they're being arrested, like, I don't want anybody to retire, right? Unless they're being arrested, they should run, I guess, and suffer the defeat at the hands of a pissed off electorate. But our elections are rigged. Anyway, here is the write-up that I thought was very good about why prorogation is probable between now and the end of the year this year. And I think probably sooner than later, right? It makes more sense to just do it now. I don't know what the excuse will be to prorogue until, because last time he prorogued, it was a reset that was a very rapid reset. So if they prorogue and then he steps down, as explained in this write-up, it makes sense to prorogue for a few months until the new year, let's say. But unless he steps down, unless something major happens for the governing party, I don't know what excuse they'll have. So who knows? Here's Mark T, and he's doing this write-up. This was from October 11th. Today's the 13th. Politics 101, why Parliament will be prorogued before Trudeau quits. 1. What is prorogation? Prime Minister calls on the Governor-General to ask the current session of Parliament be ended so he can introduce a new speech from the throne and a new session to deal with new priorities. This is similar to ending Parliament to call for an election, but there's no election call. It's just a reset. Parliamentary business committees, legislation, etc. ceases, and most importantly, the doors to the House of Commons are closed. As a result, opposition parties cannot pass a non-confidence motion that would bring down the government. They can't even enter the House. It's closed for business. Why is that important? If the Prime Minister resigned today, the opposition would immediately maneuver to call a vote of non-confidence and trigger an election. In disarray and leaderless, the Liberals would be ill-prepared to win a campaign. Strategy. Prorogation takes that tool away from the opposition. With the House prorogued, Trudeau can resign and the Liberals will have time to select a new leader from the obvious candidates, develop a campaign platform they hope will win back voters, and then either ask the Governor-General themselves for an election to seek a new mandate from the voters for their new plan, which didn't work out for Kim Campbell, or B, open a new session of Parliament with a new throne speech outlining their decision or their delicious campaign promises on prime TV, and then the opposition votes it down and an election is triggered. So one way or the other, it seems like we're going to an election. It's just which direction we take and which road we get, right? So Mark Tovey finishes with, either way, the Liberals need the time. Prorogation is their only Hail Mary option. They will use it. For wild card, this is at the part where he says among approved candidates, they'll select their leader among approved candidates. This is the caveat that he put in there. Unless they want to fail faster, bring down the ruin now, would give Dark Horse would be leaderless more time to, or would be leaders. Would give Dark Horse would be leaders more time to organize a party takeover and a complete rebuild. So he's saying that maybe there's the faction of the party that wants to totally decimate it and rebuild from the ground up. And at that point, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter the details. They can go to an election whenever. So interesting. I think probably we see a prorogation. Probably. We'll see. Laurie Goldstein says Trudeau cabinet minister who says she's disappointed by Liberal MPs trying to pressure the Prime Minister to resign violated the Conflict of Interest Act by rewarding government contract to a friend, and the wheels on the bus go round. So Mary Ng is the one giving cover to Justin Trudeau, and Laurie rightly highlights that she's violated ethics laws, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She's hardly somebody to listen to, right? And also she's one of the 11 suspected to be influenced by Chinese money. So again, not a good look for the Liberals. Not a good look at all. And the good news, though, prorogation kills 293 and kills C263, all of the bad bills that are, making their way through right now through readings and things like that. So I would be fine with prorogation. Hopefully it just takes down the government. Taking down the government also kills those bills. They die on paper. So hopefully, fingers crossed, but we're nowhere yet. Right? We've got to get through the holiday weekend yet. So Table Salt says, holy cow, let's move on to the invasion ongoing. Holy cow, the CBC just released a hit piece on Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party of Canada, linking Canada's massive surge in refugees to the Liberal Party's decision to quietly waive visitor visas for air traffic in 2023. Canada's Pravda is in full crisis mode to survive. So they've realized that people don't trust them and trust people in root sweaters much more. From their garage. Anyway, I think that it's interesting that this is actually a half decent report. It's too little too late. The thing I want to highlight, though, is in 2022, we used to have Roxham Road news. Right now, they've spread Roxham Road out to anybody who can fly into Canada instead. And then people fly in and claim refugee status. And then that's that. And then they're here for years working, regardless of whether or not working. They have the ability to work, but probably just draw on welfare, right? Some, not all. Here is the CBC report.
You had to show a return ticket, you had to show where you were staying, and you had to prove that you had the money to support yourself while you were visiting. But then, at the beginning of 2023, the Canadian government quietly decided to waive those screening requirements for the rest of the year. The reason, they said, was to help reduce a massive backlog of over 2 million visitor applications in the system.
Because they were facing such large backlogs, the government came up with an internal policy of waiving the eligibility assessment.
So they were less stringent about reviewing some of these applications to come here on temporary visas because they just wanted to get through the backlog.
And according to an internal memo that the Globe and Mail got a hold of around the time of the decision, the government knew that this might have consequences, writing that not all applicants would be genuine visitors, and that the department might expect an extra 8,600 asylum claims as a result. In real numbers, Canada saw more than 24,000 additional asylum claims from people landing at airports in 2023.
When they're not vetted.
Crazy, right? Like, that's a lot of people. And how do we serve that many people? And what is the impact on the community? Well, the impact turns out to be we can't serve them. Massive lines at Ontario Works and other things that are giving out services, and we can't house them. Price increases in rentals, etc., across the board, across Canada, especially in Ontario, in densely populated areas, etc. So why are we doing this? Why are we damaging our own country? Why are we damaging our own citizens? Why are we harming ourselves in order to, we're not doing good. We're not doing good for us. We're not doing good for them, right? It's not good to do what we're doing. And so why can't we stop these terrible programs that we seem to be, I don't know, locked into, committed to? There's no reason to be committed to them. We can just say, this is a terrible program. Let's end it. All right, scrap it, right? It's like if you put out a product, remember Homer's car, right? They couldn't make that thing, so they just scrap it. You don't try and make the thing and continue like spending bad money after bad, right? Like it's a bad idea. But when you're in government, you've got unending tax dollars and a gullible public to fund it all, I guess. Brett says independent MP Kevin Vung tears into Immigration Minister Mark Miller for stopping the deportation of a 5-time convicted criminal, as ordered by the courts. So why does our immigration minister allow illegals who have been convicted by our courts to stay in the country? It doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Ideology. Here we go.
The minister personally intervenes to stop the deportation of a 5-time convicted person who boasted, Madam Speaker, about $170,000 US in foreign money to fund illegal blockades of roads, bridges, and highways in BC's lower mainland. At a time when the immigration system is leaking like a sieve, where literal terrorists are being granted citizenship after taking part in ISIS terror videos, dismembering the bodies of people they murdered. This is what the minister thinks deserves his intervention. What's the criteria? Because thousands upon thousands of applicants would love to know. Or is there a new liberal 2-tier immigration policy? Does this new liberal policy have a limit on how many criminal convictions is too many? Clearly 5 criminal convictions is no problem for this minister. And Madam Speaker, it's no wonder that this government has been such a doormat to foreign interference when people who boast about being foreign funded as they block key road, bridge, and other infrastructure are saved from deportation. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I'm going to ask my question again. Now that the parliamentary secretary understands what I'm asking, was the minister's intervention intended to make a mockery of our legal and immigration systems, or was this intervention politically motivated to get a few more votes? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Up to you to decide. Here is Candace Malcolm. She says Iranian brothers convicted in the U.S. moved to Canada and they were granted new names by Ontario government. Oh man. So isn't that weird, right? I told you the story yesterday of the movie called Bandit, where a guy came in. He was a bank robber in, I don't know, one of the northern states, and he drove into Canada and he bought somebody's health card for something like $20, and he assumed that guy's identity, and then he began robbing banks in Canada. And I mean, like, same deal, except that this time the homeless guy that he got the health card from is, it seems, the Ontario government. So that's not great. Why are we handing out new names to Iranian terrorists, right? It doesn't make any sense to me. It seems like a really bad idea to me. CBC Marketplace staff get threatened and chased after they infiltrate a truck driving certification scam operating in Ontario. So here is what happened. This is the last half of the video, but this is, I've talked before about how there are there's black market everything, and there are groups of people who have taken over industries like trucking, and the trucking licensing has been taken over by illegal people. This has been reported, and so there are people who are in positions of power who are able to pass people through who can't actually pass the driving exams, but they just want to have a job, and the people who are owning the trucking companies want to give them a job, and the two meet, and there you go. And so this is a situation where one of those people is trying to exploit the students and tell them to do something. They're trying to get in on the scam, right? Like the CBC was investigating the scam, and they found the scam, and then this guy's like, I'm gonna burn you, I'm gonna get you. So here's what happened.
Nearby to complete the deal and the paperwork.
So the guy, the school administrator, he's waiting for us. So if you want to go, let's just go in. Let's just get it over with.
Truth is, we have no intention of going through with a transaction that sure seems illegal. So we tell him we need to think about it.
I would say maybe just take another beat to think about it, man. I don't understand, guys. What are you guys scared of? Okay, so I'm new to this country. I'm not familiar with laws and rules. I think you should just take some time to think about it. That's not how it works. Because this guy is just waiting for me.
As we back away from the deal, the instructor becomes threatening.
All right, let's go. Let's go. Sorry.
I was flying road. I'll burn you.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
He jumps in his car and chases us down in the parking lot.
I'll find you.
Come here. This it.
We take refuge in a supermarket while he pulls up out front. He sits in his car for a good hour. Sends a threatening text. You won't like how this is going to end, it says. But eventually, he leaves, leaving us with a lesson in the dangers of trying to cheat the system.
Interesting, right? I don't know exactly what's going on there, but there's a lot of very concerning things happening. Very concerning indeed. So weird, right? And if you find yourself caught up in that kind of situation, like a lot of people aren't reporters, don't have the fortitude to like back away and whatever, and like maybe that guy's not going to stop threatening you, like maybe the text message is not the end of it, right? Maybe they used a burner phone, but maybe you're not smart enough to, right? And like getting into an illegal deal, right, with your regular cell phone, maybe not a great idea. But still, people are dumb, naive. Naive is more, I think, naive, right? I'm not doing anything really illegal, and then it gets to a line, and then it crosses the line, and you're like, oh, maybe I should get a burner phone. And then by that time, the other criminals have your phone number already, and you're compromised, right? So anyway, I'm sure there have been movies that have exploited that kind of plot line. Wall Street Silver says, why is it always like this? So this is a meme, and I thought it was accurate. They can't locate illegals for deportation, but they can find them to give them money. That's interesting, right? They can find them to license them. They can find them all different reasons. But they can't find them to deport them. That's weird. Here is Mischief, and she says, this is unbelievable. Listen as this American citizen questions the IDs being given to migrants flying. And so she comes up and asks this guy what's going on with those migrants here. And he says there's a different process. And then the manager comes up and says, yeah, it's on a need to know basis, and you don't need to know.
Picture or something like that, right? And that's okay, like that's a good form of ID, because I've seen.
Well, they go through a different process.
Right. And what is that?
Huh?
What process would that be?
You want to talk to the supervisor, or?
I mean, I can, but I just know that they've come here and then they were in the line. Hi.
Yeah, there you go.
How are you? Good. How are you? Good. How are you? I know that the migrants come here, and then they don't have to have an ID. So you take a picture, right?
No, that's not what we do.
Oh, she's taking a picture. Well, at least they have a picture of them, right? And then they're going to write their name. It's like, my name is Bernice, and you can take my picture.
So there is a process, but that's not something that I can actually explain to you. So it's a need to know, and you're not a person that needs to know.
Why am I not a person that needs to know?
Because you don't work with the agency.
So you have to work with the agency.
Well, you have to work with us to understand.
Interesting. You have to work with us to understand. So you'd think that like the general public would be well aware of the things you have to do to fly on planes because they fly on planes, right? But apparently if you're a migrant, you get a special instructions on how to fly on a plane, and you would understand all that. It's very complicated. Only people who work at the TSA can understand. So sorry, move on. Nothing to see here, right? June says, following the Netherlands, Hungary has officially declared to the EU to opt out of asylum migration. It says Hungary therefore requests an opt-out from the European Union's asylum and migration acquiesce should a treaty amendment take place in the future, and will initiate the appropriate procedures to this effort. At the same time, Hungary remains committed to the Schengen. I don't know what that is. Schengen area that unfortunately has become fragmented due to prolonged and widespread internal border controls introduced because of illegal migration and security threats. So they're trying to fix things. One of the things they say is the Hungarian government is committed to taking firm steps to protect its border and curb illegal immigration that poses a threat to national security. So open borders poses a threat to national security, and we're opting out of open borders in the EU, says Hungary, after the Netherlands did that. So it seems like the EU is collapsing in on itself because of idiotic open borders, and countries are reasserting themselves and saying, we're not going to destroy ourselves because idiotic bureaucrats, idiotic communists have taken over our government and they're ordering us to destroy it. Like, we're not going to do that. Here is JD Vance, and this is an interesting conversation talking about how the construction industry is filled with illegal migrants. So if we don't allow the migrants here, simply we can't build any homes. And JD Vance is like, what are you talking about? This is insane. And the way they light him, so they don't light his eyes, right? And I mean, like, I don't have any lighting in here other than my computer screens. So sometimes when this computer screen is off, I look kind of dark, but my eyes are lit up. You can see there's life in my eyes, right? And in this clip, like he's lit from above, so the shadows are kind of dark in his eyes, and it's going to be easy to make him look evil if they want to make him look evil. But listen to the argument. I think the argument that this person makes, that the woman makes, is invalid. It does not address any real things. It creates straw man arguments to draw you away from the real arguments, which is, it doesn't make any sense. JD Vance is funny here, and like there's almost a moment where like he's got to like, is this thing on? Like I need a rim shot or something. Like, here you go.
The reason that there is a housing crisis is that not enough houses have been built.
And that we have 25 million people who shouldn't be here.
Well, I mean, this is the thing.
I think it's both.
I know you do. I don't think that many people who look into this agree with you, but about a third of the construction workforce in this country is Hispanic. Of those, a large proportion are undocumented. So how do you propose to build all the housing necessary that we need in this country by removing all the people who are working in construction?
Well, I think it's a fair question, because we know that back in the 1960s, when we had very low levels of illegal immigration, Americans didn't buy houses, didn't build houses. But of course they did.
Hello?
And I'm being sarcastic, of course, in service of a point, Lulu. The assumption that because a large number of home builders now are using undocumented labor, that's the only way to build homes, I think, again,
the country is much bigger. The need is much bigger. I mean, I'm not arguing in favor of illegal immigration. I'm asking how you would deal with the knock-on effect of your proposal to remove millions of people who work in a critical part of the economy.
Well, I think that what you would do is you would take, let's say, for example, the 7 million prime age men who have dropped out of the labor force, and you have a smaller number of women, but still millions of women prime age who have dropped out of the labor force. You absolutely could re-engage folks into the American labor market. This is, I think,
all you have to do is drop the subsidy in Canada anyway. You can do this very, 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 very quickly. Easy situation, no problems. I could fix it in a weekend. All you have to do is drop the subsidy for foreign workers and apply the subsidy exactly the same to Canadian-born workers. Done. Problem solved. That's it. It would re-engage those workers. And he makes the point that they don't count workers who have dropped out of the employment race. Like if people aren't even looking for work, then they don't count anymore. They're not unemployed. They're not working, right? And so they've created a new classification to get the unemployment numbers down because, they're not working. And sometimes that's valid. A retired person or a young person may count in the population, but they're not working and they can't work because, not necessarily can't work, but like if you're 75 in a nursing home, right, and needing aid and paying for that aid, you can't work, right? Like you're not going into the mine. It's not happening. You're not going to build a house, right? Like you're not going to go swing a hammer every day. It's just not going to happen. But there are a lot of people who don't fall into that category and who are in the middle, 35 to 55 type deal, who do want to work, but who don't have any prospects. Why? Because illegals take the opportunities at half the wages, and that's in the United States, or the rhyming version in Canada, the government subsidizes 70% of anybody else, right? That's the same. It's the same effect, different mechanism, right? And you could fix it like that. You could fix it. Contrarian, let's talk about China. Contrarian highlights this. Ever wonder how terrible mayors in Canada get elected that seem to make your city much worse? I do wonder that, Cam Guthrie. I do wonder that. And it's funny because when he first started, he was a dynamo. People really liked him. I liked him. Genuinely, I liked him. And it didn't take long for the globalistness and the foreign interests to take over, and he stopped representing the people who he said he was going to represent, and he started representing globalist interests. And like that's enough to be a terrible mayor. Absolutely terrible. Like the second you stop listening to your constituents, you've lost. You've lost totally. And awful. But also, apparently, China's influencing mayors, and the money that is influencing our federal politics is also influencing provincial, and that's very clear in Ontario and I would say Alberta, and other provinces too. But I know very clearly Ontario and Alberta much more, and the focus on federal foreign interference makes us kind of look past the municipal stuff and even the provincial stuff to a large degree. Like Doug Ford has gotten away with being a liberal, and so is Danielle Smith. Here's this.
Even mayoral elections we've seen have potentially been impacted by foreign interference. I think that one of the things that I'm looking for next week, not just in the testimonies that we're going to see from ministers and from the Prime Minister, but I'm hoping that the government will take the opportunity next week to make some announcements about what their plan is to address foreign interference, because that's something that we really have not seen much of throughout this entire process. And this foreign interference inquiry has been going on for quite some time. The scandal itself has been going on for well over a year, and we've yet to have any concrete action of how we're going to resolve this. And we definitely need to resolve it before the next election. We keep talking about whether there will be an election in the next couple of weeks or months, whether the government will prorogue or if they'll fall and we'll be forced to go to the polls. But if we do that, it will be without having taken any steps to safeguard our elections against foreign interference. So I hope that next week we will see some announcements. There needs to be a person who is responsible for telling Canadians when foreign interference is happening and what it looks like and how it's impacting our elections, so that Canadians know to.
That's not going to happen. Anybody who is going to be put in the situation to safeguard our elections or to look into election interference has been historically working for the Liberals. The Wee brothers were put on the debate crew, the debate. I can't remember. I can't remember the name of it, but there was a committee set up to decide who was going to be allowed into the leadership debate because they wanted to sideline Bernier, and all sorts of things happened. But mainly, it was all stacked with Liberal acolytes, right? Which is true of all of the China inquiries, which is true of the emergency, the War Measures Act invocation inquiry. It's been true of absolutely everything done. So like, having somebody to do this just means please put somebody in the position to hand the election to the person you want to hand the election to. It doesn't, I don't think that that's the way to do it. I think transparency and getting rid of Dominion machines is probably the way to do it. But what they're going to do is make sure that they're in control of the elections. The post-millennials reporting this rhymes. In my mind, this is exactly the same thing as Chinese interference in Canada, probably run by the same people. Like geographically, Canada's close to the United States, so these people can share access. Culturally, we're similar, so you can share strategies. You know what I mean? Like taking them for alcohol and offering them women seems to work, right? Like stuff like that. Post-millennial says Biden-Harris admin gave subsidy to China-linked EV firm for electric school buses. Then the company exec made a massive donation to the Democratic presidential campaign. Shocking. Look at me being shocked. I'm so shocked. Chinese money influencing U.S. politicians? Holy cow, I can't even believe it. It goes through how they made the donation to Biden, and in order for Harris to maintain the donation, she had to be the nominee because she was on the ticket, and she was the only one who'd be able to take up the money. So it's interesting, but I mean, a little beyond today's podcast, but it's China is interfering and influencing much more than just Canada, right? It's a big, big problem, and we don't seem to be interested in solving it at all. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful